Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're here in the Epiphan studio, and I'm joined by Ryan. Jinx. Great to have you all with us today. We're excited to be here, and today's session is all about simplifying your production with Pearl. We're going to walk through a demo showing how to set up a Pearl all the way from blank canvas to a full production.
Yep. The purpose is we're going to show you what it looks like out of the box, and we're going to configure it right up to a nice place where some kind of production might be a simple switching production. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And I think one of the big things that we're here for is to answer all of your questions, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
throw your questions. We've got chat, but we also have, you'll see a little button on the right for Q&A. That's the best place to put your questions because Ryan's monitoring questions here. We also have some moderators in there. So if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to throw them in and we'll be happy to answer all of them.
Yeah.
And while we have people joining us, I just want to take a look at chat right now. We've got folks from Michigan, from New York City, Florida, Vancouver Island,
Belgium.
Idaho State University. We've got Lou. We've got Tom's all the way from Belgium. Folks from Toronto, Montana, Netherlands, Big Apple, Kentucky. I don't recognize what that says with Yuri, but I'm guessing that's somewhere.
Someone hearted it.
Yeah. Boston, NCSU, Michigan. Too many to list. So thank you all for being here. It's great to have people from all over the world.
Yeah.
Now, while folks are trickling in, I know, Ryan, you wanted to just very quickly run down all of the fleet of Pearl family of products.
Yeah.
So maybe we can do that now.
Yeah.
So we'll flip
Exactly.
here.
Yeah, so one thing I'm excited about with this webinar, it is going to be mostly just practical. So there's no slides today. We're just going to quickly talk about the stack here, and then we're going to get right into it.
Awesome.
So our stack of Pearl devices, there are 4 of them. And then how I like to look at it is how many channels they have and if they can do layouts. So if we start at Pearl Nano is a single channel, single layout device. 4K capable, can bring in IP inputs, but there's no switching on it. So you'd just be doing your maybe ahead of a switcher or something like that, and then you move up the stack from there. So if you want to do any ISO recording, multiple recording at the same time, switching, then you're into the Pearl Nexus Pearl Mini. Pearl Nexus would be something you put in a rack controlled by something external, like maybe CMS or external control like we're doing with the Stream Deck. And then Pearl Mini could do all those things, but has a touchscreen on it for easy control and environment. Really good for volunteers, things like that. And then Pearl 2 is all of those things in one big package, 6 channels, multiple layouts, kind of your flagship device, which you put down and if you want to record a bunch of things at the same time.
Awesome. So a variety of devices depending on what you're trying to do and how many sources you need and how many simultaneous encodes you need for your recording and streaming.
Yep.
We do have some, I'll just jump in quickly, we do have some poll questions we're running as well throughout the webinar, so pay attention to the little polling button on the right. We're always keen to get some feedback from you guys. First poll question, what type of organization do you work for? I know we have some folks here from education, from live events, some corporate, some house of worship, different industries that people work in, but video important in all of them, right?
Absolutely, yep.
So just keep an eye on the poll questions throughout the webinar, and we'd be happy to get your responses there.
Yeah, and I'll be monitoring questions too, and we'll stop to answer questions, a little bit later as well.
I do want to kind of show what we've got happening here on the desk, because this is going to be our demo that we're using with this Pearl Mini right here. And you'll see we've got this set up with a Stream Deck for control, but really what we're showing you is kind of the baked cake. If this was a cooking show, we're showing you the final product first.
Yeah.
But this is a 3-channel setup here on a Pearl Mini.
Yeah.
So we've got one channel here that's our program. That's like our switched mixed program.
Yep.
Our output, if you will, for recording and streaming. But then we also have 2 other channels running on this device simultaneously. One is an ISO of our camera up here, and then we've got an ISO of our presentation. So in many cases, people want to share their presentation slides, their PowerPoints, maybe another video device with some media on it.
For sure.
That's where you can be simultaneously recording those ISOs while you're recording your main switch program at the same time.
Yep, for sure. And you can have different audio in those channels. They're there, so you can use it for post-production later. And that's what the Pearl Mini is. And when you go up to Pearl 2, then it's up to 6 channels you can do at one time. So lots of ways to use our devices. So maybe we'll take it back to default and go from there.
So I've got a configuration preset here just to set this device back to a default setting. And then we'll bake the cake. We'll,
Bake a cake. We'll break some eggs. We'll just mix some flour and figure it out.
Exactly.
All
Okay,
right.
so let's pop back to our
Yeah.
camera. Why don't you check in the meantime if we have any questions coming in
For sure.
on the Q&A. I'm sure we'll get more as we dip into some of these topics, but just to give you an idea of what we're going to show you, we're going to show you how to set up channels, how to set up recordings and streams, how to create some layouts within your program channel so that you can switch between different layouts during your production.
Yeah.
And then we'll give you some sort of tips for streamlining your workflow with configuration presets, with scheduling, so you
Yep.
can schedule your recordings and streams. And then we'll show you how to set up a Stream Deck as well if you want to have that nice, easy control interface to run your production. So
sure.
hoping that by kind of showing off some of these features and functions that you can really streamline your production and workflow and make it really easy for that end user to just walk into a space,
Yeah.
press a single button to record and stream or to automate that process entirely.
Absolutely. Or like apply configure across the entire fleet. Just easy ways of starting with one thing, spreading it out across an entire other devices, things like that. So we do have one question here. So has anyone had any issues with NDI camera power flapping when the Pearl Mini is pulling NDI connections? The camera reboots and there is a power flap on the network side. Okay, the reboot only occurs when the Pearl Mini is getting feeds through NDI channels on Mini. I'm not too sure. Maybe it sounds like the NDI source isn't getting enough power, maybe from a PoE switch or something like that, if it is PoE powered. That's an interesting question. I think I might reach out to the camera manufacturer to see if there might be something there. Alternatively, if that's not the case, we could always take a look at logs and go from there.
Yeah, you can always contact us directly on our support. We got the chatbot on our website. That's a really good way to directly interact with our support team
Yep.
at epiphan.com, or you can always email us, support@epiphan.com.
That's right, for sure.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. So I've got here, I'm in the Epiphan cloud, as you can see, and this is Epiphan Edge, where we can see all of our Pearl devices. And actually here at the bottom, you'll see we've got this Studio Pearl 2, and this is actually, we'll hide us for a second. This is actually the Pearl that we're running this production on right now. So you see we're recording and streaming here on this Pearl. But this Pearl Mini here is what we're going to set up
Yep.
as our demonstration.
For
So
sure.
let's go ahead and click into it. And you can see by default, it starts out with 2 channels.
Yep.
And those channels are mapped to your HDMI A and your HDMI B input. But in our case, what we want to do is we want to create a switched program rather than just recording those sources.
Yep.
So we're going to show you how to do that. And the first step is to click this button to log into the admin. This is the back end of your Pearl.
And to mention before we get into this, and we'll just quickly go here, if you're ever local, no internet connection, you can always go to system status and you can find the IP address right there on the device.
Yeah, that's how you'd access your device if it's
you're
not
local,
paired to your
exactly.
cloud.
Yep.
Maybe if you're local. I'll keep us on screen here because we're not covering up too much. Okay, so at the top here you see the 2 channels. We've got HDMI B and HDMI A. I'm going to start by just removing that second channel.
Yep, and this is just because when a Pearl device was a box, Pearl Mini, you have HDMI A and B channels. It's meant to be set up for quick auto mapping, as Dan said. If you're not doing any ISO recording, now we will in this case, we set up later, but typically what we see folks doing is maybe that one channel, that one switch program. You don't need other channels. Delete the second channel, configure your first channel.
And with this first channel, right now it's called HDMI A, but I want to rename that. I like to keep my channels named to really make it easy to stay organized in my production. So this is going to be our main program channel. And the first thing that is probably the most important is right here, the encoding settings. So Ryan, maybe you can just quickly walk us through what are these encoding settings and why they're important.
Yeah, so the encoding settings that you see here, that will dictate what the settings will be for your output. So what I mean by that is your recordings and your streams. So if you want to do 1080p output to like YouTube or something like that, then you need to make sure it's set up properly here. By default, the use current signal resolution as frame size will be checked. And why that's checked is it's so people can just plug in a source, the Pearl automatically configures itself to the resolution of the resolution from that camera or computer, and then they don't need to set up anything at all. But if you're going to be doing switching between different sources, it's generally recommended to disable that setting just in case there is different resolutions coming from those sources. set a static resolution, and then everything else you hear, like keyframe interval, frame rate, bit rate, that's usually dictated by the place you're streaming to. But if you're just doing local recording, then you can, you have room to set this up to 50,000 kilobit per second or 50 megabit per second. So you have lots of space to, get some more quality out of your code and change your frame rates and things like that.
Yeah, this is where, bitrate is really determining
Yeah.
not only the quality of that encoding, but also the file size of the recording that's going to pop out the other side, right?
Absolutely.
So for something like a 1080p HD, something in the neighborhood of like a 6,000 kilobit or a 6 megabit stream is
good.
in many cases very good.
Yeah, good trade-off between compression and quality, and you'll see auto in that place, that field by default. Generally, for most folks, you can leave it like that, but if you need to change it a bit, you absolutely can.
Yeah. So with something like a 6,000 kilobit recording, you're probably looking at a file size of somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3 gigs per hour.
Yep.
Something like that.
For sure.
Okay, so we've got our encoding setting. Now the next thing we want to check on this program channel is our recording settings. So we'll click recording, and what do we have here, Ryan?
Yeah, so we have some recording set up here, and the reason why this is important is because Pearl devices are designed to be loop recorders. So what that means is that if a Pearl device starts to run out of space, it'll start recording over the oldest files. So for that mechanism to be there, we need to set a maximum file size for those recordings. Now this doesn't mean that the Pearl will stop recording if it hits that file size. It just means it'll start moving data into a new container. It's kind of like if you make a bunch of spaghetti, you have too much from one container, and so you have to move some of that spaghetti into another container. That's all this is doing.
Right. The best analogy I use, it's kind of like my PVR for TV at home, right?
Yeah.
Like if I record my new series, it's going to record over the oldest thing I have recorded on my
Absolutely.
television. So let's just go in here and we'll just make a no time limit on the recording. And then here's where we would choose the file limit of those recording file size limit.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll max this out. We'll go to 64 gig.
Yep, and these things here, that when you set size limit of 64 gig, that doesn't mean your files will be 64 gig. It just means that the maximum recording size can be 64 gigabyte. So it'll be anywhere within that range.
All right.
Finally, you'll see, I want to press change there one more time there, Dan, if you wouldn't mind. You'll see the file name prefix. If for some reason, if you wanted to name the files differently than the program name or the channel name, you can do that here. And we see some folks do this with API. So let's say someone walks into the room, they want to give their recording a name. They can have a field on a control panel, they fill it out, and then it changes the prefix, and then you go from there. And then finally, you see excluded from automatic file upload. If you wanted to, Pearls can automatically move recordings to a server or even to Epiphan Edge. And so you could automate your file delivery and everything like that by enabling automatic file upload and enabling it further down the settings. We won't really touch on that today, but it's a possibility.
So much more if we dig beneath the surface.
Absolutely. Yep.
For the purpose of today, we're going to keep it pretty simple because we want to cover the basics to really streamline your production as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our program channel. The next step is to create some layouts.
Now, before you go into layouts, I'm wondering, should we touch on a couple questions first?
Sure. Why don't we see what questions we have coming in?
So we have a couple questions here. So, will there also be a plugin for Stream Deck and Mac? So we do have some requests for that. I believe that we're looking at it. Right now, the Stream Deck plugin is indeed just for PC.
Okay.
Looking for recommendations, microphones, preamps, mixers. Ooh, this is a hard question. It depends on many things, your environment, the room size, there's your features you want within that. So it's hard to give recommendation on that, but generally if you buy stuff from reputable manufacturers or work with an AV team, they're going to be able to give you some really good recommendations for what you should use depending on your use case, which is very important to consider your use case when you're buying that type of stuff.
Yeah, I guess it depends where you are. If you're in a podcast studio, you're probably going to want something like a SM7B
close. Yeah,
microphone.
yeah.
If you're in a classroom or an auditorium, maybe you need a lav for that presenter.
Absolutely, yep. And today we're using a shotgun mic right here. It works well for our purposes. You mentioned that you're recording this. Yes, we will definitely share the recording afterwards. Let's see here. How many ever get video transitions? Video transitions. Video transitions is something that we have a lot of requests for. A lot of our clients typically just use the hard cuts, but we hear you, and it's something that we are looking at still on the roadmap. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Okay.
That covers our questions. Let's dip back into setting up this production. Okay, so here we have in our layouts for this program channel, it's giving us a default layout, which is just our HDMI A camera source. But I want to start from a blank slate here, so I'm just going to remove that item. Actually, why don't we keep us on the screen here?
Sure. Yeah.
So the first thing I like to do when I'm setting up a layout is, in many cases, bring in an image. So I'm going to bring in a background image. Now here we can just click and drag PNG or JPEG files to upload an image, but I've already got one here, and this is just a background, a gradient background. So I'm just gonna scale this up, and this is just like Photoshop. You can grab the handles, you can click and drag, you can scale, and you can create your items here as layers here on the left.
Yep.
Now the next thing I wanna do is bring in, I'm gonna use this as sort of a pre-roll layout. So I'm gonna bring in kind of like a little graphic here, similar to how we had at the beginning of this stream. And since this is a PNG, it's got transparency. It's going to adhere that transparency in the layout.
Yeah, and a cool thing that Dan just did there, you saw he grabbed the vertical middle dots there. Well, if you have something and put it in the middle of the frame, if you drag out both the sides, it'll center it exactly in the middle there. If you wanted to, you could pull the top and bottom one, it would make it full frame, and so you have these lots of little ways to make things nice and centered in your frames.
Now this layout, as I said, I wanted to call it pre-roll. So enter a name for it, and we can see it here.
Yep.
And now always remember right here at the very bottom right, maybe we'll just hide us for a second here, there's a save button.
Yes.
So make sure you click save. That's gonna save your layout.
And for your pre-rolls, a good thing to remember, you scroll back down to audio there, if you wouldn't mind. You probably don't want the studio audio within the pre-roll, because then everyone's going to hear your pre-production
Exactly.
audio.
So I'll uncheck this. This is where we choose our audio sources. In our case, for this Pearl Mini, we're bringing in our audio through our camera, but in other cases, if you are going through a mixer, you can select your XLR input here, and I'll click save again. Okay, so we've got our pre-roll layout. Now let's add another layout. I'm going to call this one camera. And this is just going to be a full frame of our camera source. So I will bring in video source, and I'm going to select my HDMI A input, and we'll scale this up. And now we have, remember to select my audio, HDMI A audio, that's from our camera, and I'm going to click save. So now we have a second layout, which is full frame of our camera.
Before you move on to the next layout, I want to show something kind of cool you can do. So if you scroll down back to the video source, if you ever need to swap the video source, even if you've moved around or changed things, you can just click the source and go to another one. And then so you can change it around any which way you'd like. Just press save when you're done.
Awesome. Okay. Now the next layout we want here, I'm going to call this presentation, because I want a full frame layout of our slide deck, or maybe our laptop, or whatever presentation source. And this is coming in over HDMI B. Here's my PowerPoint. We'll scale that up. We still want the camera audio, so I'll select HDMI A audio and click save. Okay, now let's get into some more fun layouts. Maybe we want to create a side-by-side or a two-up. So I'm going to call this two-up. Let's add our gradient background. Scale this up. And now I want to have like two boxes, one for me and one for you.
Yeah.
Okay? So we'll go select that camera. We've got our camera, but maybe for this one, I just want me. So I'm going to grab a crop, click crop. Now we can do a freeform crop any which way we want here on this source, but I want to use a 1-to-1 because I want this to be like a perfect square.
Pretty good freeze frame we got there, by the way.
Thanks, Ryan. Okay, that's looking good enough. We'll click OK.
Oh, that's better.
That's better. Okay, we got the smile now. Okay, so we got a nice square crop from that camera source. Now, one thing I want to call attention to here, like we can use these handles to scale, but we can also, if we want to get really precise, we can use these numbers that you see at the edge of the frame. And these percentage values represent the percentage from the edge of the frame to the edge of the source. So I'm going to dial in some precise values here. I want like a 13% gap, top and bottom. And then over here on the left, I want it to be pretty close, so I'm going to go like 2%. And then from the right side, let's say something like 50%. We'll go kind of halfway. I'm going to scroll down here. I'm just going to, while I'm here, select my audio source, being that camera. I'm just going to go ahead and click save because it's going to show me exactly what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
Now let's add a second source for Ryan. We'll go HDMI A. Let's do a square crop of Ryan. There, I got some revenge on you with that freeze frame. Ryan.
It'll be better in a moment.
We'll make a nice little crop of Ryan here. Okay. There we go. There we go.
Important to mention there, when you're seeing those kind of freeze frames, that's the first image that the layout editor would have grabbed when it first opened. When you do your crops, it's grabbing another bit from that layout. And so then that's why you get these different looks or different video sources here, or the looks of the video sources. It's just grabbing the data at different times. That's all that's happening. Important to mention here too, if you know the pixel values of where you actually want your layout items to be, you can specify pixel values also in these entry fields, the percentages or that Dan's modifying.
Yeah. Okay, that's looking not too bad. So that's pretty good. So we've got a crop of me, a crop of you. These are looking nice and even. Mm-hmm. Because I entered using the number values, they're aligned perfectly. But in many productions, we want to do some branding. So let's add an image here. And I've got kind of a little bit of a graphic logo for our podcast that we're starting, Ryan.
Yeah.
We're starting an outer space podcast.
Great. I've always wanted to.
So I'm just going to scale this down into the corner. Maybe we want it over here on the left. That's looking pretty good. Okay. Good enough. I'm going to click save.
Great.
So there we have our side-by-side layout. Now let's make another layout because we want to have a few different layouts we can go through here. This one I want more of like showing my presentation. Mm-hmm. So we'll call this presentation plus camera. Again, I'm just going to add our background and we'll keep it nice and consistent.
Mm-hmm. And if you really wanted to, you could have maybe added created a layout with a background, and you could have duplicated that layout a bunch of times. You wouldn't have to put the layout in every time. So there's different ways that you can make this.
Yeah, there's a copy button here, right?
Exactly.
So you can just copy an existing layout and then modify it.
Yep.
Could be useful if you are creating a bunch of different layouts.
For sure.
I'm going to use those same percentage values that I had with my margins. We'll get this nice and tight over here. And maybe we'll do this. So there we've got our PowerPoint deck. And let's add the camera as well because I want to do a little bit of a picture-in-picture.
Yep.
Maybe Ryan's presenting this.
Excellent.
So I'll create a square of Ryan. Maybe we'll make it a little bit more of a close-up here.
And the cool thing is too, Dan's grabbing different crops of the same video source multiple times in different layouts. So it's you can recycle the same thing over and over again, which is really convenient. It's such a good snapshot.
Yeah. We'll get you a new snapshot in just a second.
That's okay. I'm cool with it.
We'll go here. Maybe this. Put that up here in this corner.
Yeah.
I'm going to add now our podcast graphic again. Throw that in the bottom left.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to click save. Oh, don't forget to choose my audio source.
True.
I always forget that. Need to remember.
There we go.
So that's looking pretty good. Maybe I might make just a slight adjustment here.
Yeah, and you can hold control as well when you're moving things around to get a little more granular type
Yeah.
movement. So if you want to, because if you let go of control there, Dan, you can
It's
see
more of a snap to grid when you're
Yeah.
not holding control, but if you hold control on your keyboard, you see how it gets nice and smooth.
gives you a little more room to move things around. Be a little more precise for sure.
Okay, we'll click save.
Yeah.
Now I just wanted to share one other idea for how to create layouts. And to do that, I'll make one more layout here. Now this is a bit of the different methodology. I'm going to call this layout podcast. Now with the previous layouts we were building, we had a gradient background, and then we're putting the video sources as layers on top of that background, right? But the reverse can also be a way to do things, to take your video sources first and then overlay your branding using something like a PNG image that has some transparency in it.
Yeah.
So why don't we take a look at how to do that?
Yeah.
So I'm going to add a new item. we'll add a picture. Now in Photoshop, I've gone ahead and created kind of a branded layout for this podcast here. And you see it has some video frames already built with some nice kind of pins, some borders around the video sources. We've got our graphic, we've got some background image. But how I've created this in Photoshop is those black squares are transparent in Photoshop. So Pearl is going to recognize that and it's going to adhere that transparency. So now we can put our video layers behind this PNG and it will frame for us automatically. We don't really have to be as precise with our cropping.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's add a video source. We'll add HDMI A. Okay. Now this isn't going to fit so nicely here because it's more of a square. So I will crop and I'll make a square crop. Boop. Okay, so there's Ryan. And now I can just, whoops, click Ryan again here. Now we're going to start by kind of scaling it on top. Go something like that.
Yeah, so you can really just be, pretty, just throw out the video sources, and then you'll see in a moment when Dan pulls that layer, because you can move layers around in the layout, that it's going to get rid of this, this non-precise movement, which is a really nice, quick way of doing things. If you maybe you have to change a layout on the fly during a live show or something like that. This is a nice way that you could do that without having to worry about being so precise.
Okay, so I mean this doesn't look very nice right now, but what we're going to do, here's the trick. We've got our PNG graphic. It's on the bottom right now, but we're going to drag it up and put it on top.
And then if we just move Dan's arm out of the way there,
yeah,
it'd be good to go.
Imagine it being two camera sources is the effect we're trying to create.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll select our audio, click save,
Yep.
and there we go. And you get the idea. We can make some precision adjustments here. I'll just drag me back to the top here, maybe. Whoops. Oh, drag that underneath. I don't know why it's not letting me. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Okay, we'll click save. All right, so look at that. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got half a dozen layouts here. So that's really all there is to it, creating layouts. It's kind of as simple as click and drag, kind of like creating a PowerPoint or using Photoshop.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
if fun to experiment on the kind of layouts you can come up with. Using those PNG images is a really powerful way to get your branding into those layouts as well.
Maybe we'll just quickly talk about, just before we move on, if you want to press add input at the bottom left-hand side underneath inputs over here, where you see graphics.
Okay.
Yeah.
Input. Oh yeah. So we've got a way to add external graphics as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So we're using hardline inputs today, but we could bring in an RTSP source, an SRT source. We have NDI Discovery on here as well, in addition to having web graphics. So you can output a source from FlowX, Uno, and overlay that over top of a production as well.
Yeah, I can show how that works here. Why don't I just do it quickly on one of these layouts?
Sure.
So here's that 2-up we created. I'm going to add a video source, and I'm going to select my graphics input, which is linking to Uno Overlays, which is a nice graphics system that runs in the web.
It's free.
And here we go. Awesome. We just scale it up.
Yeah.
And now I've got the little live bug in the top right corner, and I've got the Epiphan logo in the bottom right corner. Click save. Boom. We've got web graphics coming into our layout now as well.
And those could all be controlled by a Stream Deck as well, bring them on and off the screen dynamically. And so just if you want to go a little bit further in your production, and if you want to make things look a little more dynamic, it's a really good way of doing it, for sure.
Awesome. Now, just lastly, to wrap up this kind of channels and layout segment, we've got our program channel now, right, on this device. Why don't we show the device?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so there's one channel here, but we've got, if we go to layouts, it's going to show, and we'll get into this switcher in a minute, but we're going to be able to see right away here on the touchscreen all of those layouts we created.
Yeah.
And we can do the switching right here on the touchscreen. But we'll come back to this in a minute.
For sure.
But right now, that's the only channel we have on this device. But in many cases, folks want to be able to record those ISOs, and that's going to give you more flexibility in post-production. If you have that recording of your camera and that clean recording of your presentation, an editor can make any changes to the program they want after the fact, or pull clips out of your program and be able to do any post-production that you want to do. So
Yeah.
let's create a couple ISOs here. So we're going to add a second channel. Now this channel will only have one layout. It only requires one layout. There's no switching on this channel. And we're going to call this camera. And we'll just add a video source, HDMI A. Make sure we select our audio and click save. And boom, now we have a second channel that is our camera. Let's just check our recording settings here as well. I'm going to max out these durations and size limits.
Yeah, basically doing the same thing that you're doing the other ones. Quick thing to mention here at channels, and same with the program channel, there is a bookmark option there. We won't talk about it too much, but what it allows you to do is you can put it up, you can use it to an API command to a controller, and so you can add bookmarks into a recording, and then that could be used in post-production later to, you know, maybe map out some important parts.
Yeah, cool. Let's add a third channel because we can have 3 channels on this Pearl Mini. This one I'm going to call presentation, and this is going to be the ISO of that presentation source. So we'll add a video source. On HDMI-B, we've got our PowerPoint. Scale that right up. We're still going to check the HDMI-A audio because by recording that camera audio onto this presentation, it's going to help us sync things up in post when we have that audio on both sources.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there we go. We've got now 3 channels. Let's go back to our overhead view here. And we can see our 3 channels on our device.
Yep.
Our program channel where we can do our switching. We've got our camera ISO channel and our presentation ISO channel.
Exactly where we started when we first started off. This is our, this is our go to production configuration here. And so now we're kind of, we're ready to start our live show, ready to go.
Awesome. So now that we've covered that, why don't you check in on Q&A?
Yep.
And I think we have some more polls we want to run as well.
Yes, exactly.
Let me see here what the next poll question is.
All right.
Question for you guys. How many video spaces do you manage? I know some of you are, hyper-focused on one studio, or maybe you're a live event producer, so you're in a lot of different locations at the same time. But just curious to know how many video spaces you guys are managing.
Yeah. All right, so here comes some questions. So can you upload to Google Drive? So right now we don't have a direct integration with Google Drive, but what we typically see folks do is that they might set up like a local FTP or SFTP server, whatever server you really want that we're compatible with, CIFS, SCP, whatever it is. And then you'd have a folder in there, and then that folder would be linked to your Google Drive. So Pearl would push the files in that folder would automatically upload to Google Drive. We do that in our studio for our recordings, so we can automatically goes there, goes to Dan, who Dan does all of our editing as well, and then so he can have everything delivered to a remote folder that he can access from wherever he is.
Awesome. Yeah, it is nice to just walk into the studio, press record, and by the time I'm back at my desk,
Yeah,
it's in my Google Drive, but that Google Drive I have it shared with a few other people on the team.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
no direct link to Google Drive, but Google Drive can have a watch folder. So as long as your recordings are going to a PC or a server that's watched by Google Drive, you're all set.
Yeah. And it's not even that bad of an idea to have a double backup of things anyways. More backups is, typically 1 or 2. It's a good idea. Can you explain how it works with Zoom? So with our products, if you want to integrate it with Zoom, we have a product called Connect, which allows you to effectively extract isolated audio and video sources from a Zoom or a Teams meeting. It's kind of like having a capture card between Teams or Zoom's backend directly to a Pearl device, or actually anything that can ingest SRT. Otherwise, what we see folks doing, and that's actually how my home setup is, I have a Pearl Mini takes in my camera, my microphones, and then I have it outputting HDMI to a capture card which runs into my computer. And so all the audio and video from my Pearl is coming into my computer. I select that as my video and audio source within Zoom or Teams, and then that's how I get it in. And there's a very small delay of what actually comes out, and so it's seamless within the meeting environment.
Awesome.
Curious for lower thirds. How it works is exactly how you saw Dan kind of creating those crops and things like that. If you wanted to create a lower third of something, you could crop out a section of a video source or something like that. or you could have a a PNG or anything and put that down in the lower part of the screen.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do your graphics. We kind of showed you how to do it with PNGs. We also just briefly touched on how to bring in web graphics. And I can show this tool here is what we're using in our studio. This is called Uno Overlays, and it allows you to run all kinds of basic graphics. There's all kinds of templates that they have on the site. And then you basically just copy the web output. Where would it be here? It's this, the output URL. It's an HTML5 web output. And then you paste that as an input source on your Pearl. So here I've pasted this URL from my graphics tool in the web, and that's how we're pulling in the graphics to this show. So really seamless way to do it. And with Uno overlays, you can even create Stream Deck buttons to trigger those overlays if you wanted, have web-based graphics, a web-based graphics workflow.
Yeah, and that's how we did this. These on the screen here. We're using Uno overlays. We're able to bring it on and off the screen, but putting our polls on and off. So really simple way of doing it, and in a way that's right in front of you on one device. So how do you set up streams with one main English feed and multi-language audio feeds for foreign languages? This is a great question. How many foreign language feeds can you run simultaneously per Pearl? Excellent question. So typically what you do is you do kind of how Dan set up the isolated channels. So you might have, and maybe we'll show someone how to set up a nested channel really quick. So it's choosing channel as an input.
Okay.
So what you could do, so if you go to, say, the camera.
Okay, so let's go back to laptop.
Yeah, go to the camera input. Maybe you have one video source and you have multiple audio sources. So let's say XLR. So you're taking maybe 4 XLR feeds. In Pearl Mini, we'll say just 2 for this example. One XLR feed could be in English, one could be French. What you could do is you could set up your first channel with your video source and the English audio. And then in the second channel, you can actually choose a channel as a source. And then so you can bring the same videos occurring inside the first channel, add a different audio source to it. And then so you could have your English in one and then your French in the other. If we were to decouple the XLR inputs on Pearl, in this case, you'd see an XLR 1 and 2. A Pearl 2, you'd see 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so if you're doing it by XLR, Pearl 2, you could do 4 different channels, 4 different languages, and then stream those off to different YouTube feeds or something like that, or have different isolated recordings. So that'd be typically how you do that.
Brilliant.
Let's confirm whether or not the recording can create a dual image. The end user can then size independently and also treat as a dual image, so camera can be displayed on a monitor of a computer with graphics, PowerPoint. Yeah, so we actually have a multi-view feature, which might satisfy this. And so what it allows you to do, if you want to click a HDMI output there.
Yep.
Perfect. And click source and go to multi-view. You could select multiple things to be on an external monitor that aren't in your recordings. And so if you wanted a monitor to have different channels, channel status, audio status, then you could do it with this. Or the alternative would be to create another channel and then create a layout that had the specific design you wanted to, and then choose that as your source for the HDMI output. So, and then when you're looking at channel load, remember Pearl Mini is 3, Pearl Nexus is 3, 1080p 30 I should say. Pearl 2 is up to 6, 1080p 30, 4K as well. Could be Pearl 2 or Pearl Nano.
Very cool. Yeah, multi-viewer is nice if you want to just have that single monitor as a confidence monitor that has all your sources on it.
Yep.
When you're running a production. Super useful.
For sure. How many channels Pearl Mini? Oh, so we just kind of answered that. We suggest if we start from the bottom, Pearl Nano, 1 channel, that's all you can do on a Pearl Nano, can be up to 4K 30. Pearl Nexus Pearl Mini is 3 1080p 30 channels. Could you do 4 720p channels? Yeah, totally. Pearl 2, 6 1080p 30 channels. And then depending on the resolution, frame rates, you can expand that. Our recommendations are fairly conservative, especially for Pearl 2.
Yeah, we don't stop you from adding more channels.
No.
It's what will happen though is if you try to run 6 channels on a Pearl Mini, you're going to start dropping frames on those encodings, right? Because your processor is going to be at 100% usage, and you're going to drop some frames. So these are recommendations. They're not set in stone, but we do extensive performance testing, and we've made these recommendations based on what we can safely assume that you won't be dropping any frames.
Yep.
But like Ryan said, like on a Pearl Mini, 3 full HD channels, that could be 4 720p channels.
Sure.
Right? If you don't mind reducing your resolution a bit, you can squeeze a bit more that way.
For sure. Okay.
Okay, so what's next? So we've created our channels, right? So we've got our Pearl Mini here, right? We've got our channels, we've got our program channel, and then our 2 ISOs. Now we want to actually do some streaming, some switching, some recording, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, if we want to start a recording, it could be as simple as right here in the cloud. We could do it remotely by just clicking record, right? So we're now recording all 3 of those channels. And if we go back to our device, you can see we've got our little red light here, and we've got the flashing recording indicator on each of those channels.
Yep. And if you click in, you'd see a time clock going up there as well. So.
Okay, let's pop back to here. Now, the next thing we want to do is actually set up some streams. Now, we can set streaming destinations right here in the cloud, or we can do it in the admin panel. Where do you want to do it in the cloud, Ryan?
Why don't we do it in cloud first, and then we'll just show how to do it in the admin panel.
Okay,
as
sure.
well. Yeah.
So, we're not going to stream our ISOs, but we do want to stream our program channel because that's where we're doing, all the switching of our program. So right here, we can add a streaming destination. I'm going to click New Destination, and this is an RTMP push. Maybe we want this to go to YouTube. Sorry, my typing is a little off today.
YouTube.
Now we need the YouTube URL destination. I've got a YouTube channel over here. Let's just grab that URL. Whoops. We'll paste it. And we need our stream key here. Copy it. Paste it here. Save. Okay, so now this streaming destination is saved in our cloud. So anyone on our team can now access this streaming destination.
Yep.
So I'm gonna pop back here.
Yeah, and I want to mention what Dan means there by anyone on your team is you could have a team of full of devices. And so let's say an education institution or something like that may have 300, 400 devices. What that means when you add a streaming destination to Edge is then you can take that streaming destination and then move it between any one of those devices. So it's a way to easy recycle these streams depending on who's using it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So here now in the dropdown, I've got that YouTube channel as a streaming destination. I'm gonna select it.
It adds it in.
And let's start streaming this program to YouTube. Okay, now we see on our device, we've got a blue light indicating the stream is live. We can also see flashing blue on our program channel.
But not on the other channels because we're not streaming those.
And if we go to our YouTube channel,
There it is.
there it is. Awesome. So we're streaming to YouTube.
Wonderful.
We're gonna be famous.
We're gonna be so. Oh, it's private. Ah.
Okay, so we've got a streaming destination.
Yeah.
Now we maybe want to be able to do some switching here
Yeah.
on this production. So we're on that pre-roll graphic that we had before. So what is the best way to, Ryan, to do our switching in this channel?
So there's multiple ways to switch. So if we go to the device, you can see if we click on the program channel, we can click on the switcher button, which is here, which brings up our switcher, and you can press, green is always pre, and then red is live. There's also a way to do it within the cloud interface by just clicking switcher, which is right there. So you can remotely get into any Pearl device into a switcher wherever you are, and then switch between layouts you've created. And this is probably a really great way of doing it if you have an Edge subscription as part of the premium version. You can also access this same page on the Pearl device itself. So if we go to the local admin panel.
Okay, let me just find that again. Okay, here we are.
So if you click on the program channel, any channel that has more than one layout, you'll see a switcher button underneath recording here. And then that will be used to get over to that switcher. You'll take over a session because we are already in here. And then now you're into the same interface, but now it's locally rather than being via the cloud. Finally, you could do it in the web UI, but that's more for testing, like the actual admin panel we did the configuration in. And so generally I'd recommend using this page. The great thing about this is that it's responsive. And so if you're in the local environment, let's say you have a tablet or an iPad or something like that, you can access this UI from it. It'll be responsive to your screen, and then you can literally be holding an iPad at the in the actual during your production, maybe at the back of an auditorium, and doing all your layout switching and things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, for many productions, it's as simple as, I just need 3 layouts or 4 layouts.
Yeah.
So this is a really nice way to just do some, up value to your production to get a couple different layouts and create those looks
Absolutely.
that you want for your brand.
Yeah. Finally, I think we should just show just how to add a streaming destination in the admin panel, just because there are more options there.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So if I see my program channel here, I can go to streaming.
Yep.
There's that YouTube that we created already, right? And you can see it's kind of, because it's managed by Epiphan Edge, we don't really have any settings
You don't
here.
change any settings there yet.
But we can create a new stream, and there's all kinds of protocols, right?
Yep, RTMP, RTSP, multicast, MPEG, SRT, HLS, and so you can use any one of these. So essentially, if you have a Pearl device, you can stream to pretty much anywhere on the internet or anything, maybe in your local environment, SRT, destination endpoint or something like that. You could do that, and then it's just a matter of filling out the fields that are required for your CDN, your content distribution network. And then that's kind of it. And then depending on the streams you choose, there's different settings. But we follow best practices and things like that for SRT and all those things, so it's very straightforward for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've got live. We're live. We're live on this production here. It's looking great. But let's take things and streamline them a little bit so that this is easier to operate this production. But before we do that, why don't you take a look at Q&A, Ryan?
Yep.
And I will, I'm going to run the next poll right now. And this is a question that I always have for folks.
Yeah.
And the question is, what's your biggest challenge with your current workflow? And we've got a few different ideas of what they may be, but I'm curious what you guys think. In many cases, people's workflows are, too complex or not simplified enough, or maybe they have too many steps involved.
Yeah. Or simply require someone to do something.
Yeah. So curious, let us know in that poll, what's your biggest challenge with your current workflow?
And I think the next part after the questions is segues nicely because we're going to show you how to schedule a stream and recording on a Pearl device.
Awesome.
So let's get into the Q&A here. So what is the recommended max CPU load? So generally it varies per device, but you maybe want to see it under like 70-75%. Spikes are okay. So every now and then, like maybe you're recording and it's like a CMS event or something like that, plus you're doing uploading at the same time, and then you might see spikes up to like 70 or like 80. That's okay, as long as those things like come back down, you're not consistently there, you'll be fine. And even in the case if they are there, the worst thing that's probably going to happen is dropped frames, and so you don't really have to worry too much about that. But if you can keep it under that 75-ish area, you're going to be good.
And where can we see that, Ryan? So like I'm here, if you scroll down to the bottom of your Pearl admin, there's this info tab.
Yeah.
That's where you can see the current system load, right?
Yeah.
And then also, is there a way to do that in Edge as well, in device info?
Device info right there. You see 63%, and then it'd be the same for all devices. Again, when I'm saying this, the lower your CPU load, the better, the more headroom you have. That's obviously going to be a good thing. Generally, if you're seeing high CPU load, it's because you've overconfigured the device.
Too many channels.
Too
high of bit rates.
Yeah, or inputs.
Yeah.
Really.
We also have the ability to add like media files, like video playback into layouts. And I've noticed that if you're trying to do too many video playbacks, it's going to spike your system load, right?
Yeah.
So the solution to that is, well, if you need more headroom, maybe you need to step up to something like a Pearl 2.
Exactly.
To be able to do more concurrent encodes.
Yep.
Or try to reduce, how many inputs you're trying, or how many channels you're trying to do at once, or just reduce the bit rates of those channels.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it is a compute system. It is a computer. It is made specifically for doing recording, streaming, and switching. This is a custom OS that we built. But it is a computer, and so you treat it like a computer. You wouldn't run your computer at 80-90% all the time. You wouldn't do the same with a Pearl device either.
Cool.
Max number of layouts. Oh, let's see here. Skip a question. Here it is. Is cloud service an add-on or is it included? There's a free version of cloud. It gives you things like basic management, adding RTMP streams, starting and stopping, recording manually, and looking at device health, things like that. But if you want the remote login, scheduling, the remote login to the switcher, things like that, bulk actions, so like upgrading a fleet of Pearl devices, their firmware in one click, then that's when you need the premium version.
Yeah.
So,
And the premium version is an annual or monthly subscription.
yep.
It's not that expensive, but if you need those features like remote admin, remote switch, and scheduling, that's where you'd look at the premium. Now, if you just need to start and stop records, that's completely free.
Yeah, for sure. And like when we're looking at customers that have hundreds of devices, there is a point when we do have an unlimited license as well. So if you get over a certain point, then it makes sense to go to unlimited, and then we don't keep charging for the amount of devices at that point, because we do have universities that have 400 devices, and they use Premium Edge, and they say it saves them hundreds of hours in labor and just the peace of mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Ask a question about the monitor. What I was looking for is, can the Pearl device be configured that the viewer of the stream gets two separate images that can be viewed on separate displays of the computer? Zoom, for example, can do this in dual monitor systems.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you still have to create a channel for that dual look. When you're creating a channel, you're creating what's called like an encoding pipeline, and so whatever is in that video frame will be what will be in recording and stream. So if you wanted to have a separate stream that would be of two different sources, you would need another channel, and then configure that within the channel, and then maybe only have that streamed out to the folks that are watching. Hope that answers that question.
Yeah, the other thing that came to mind when you asked that question of having two discrete ISOs streaming at the same time, content management systems allow for that functionality.
Sure.
So, and Pearl are integrated with some of the most common ones like Panopto, Kaltura,
OpenCast,
Yuja, and those allow kind of a side-by-side streamed experience for the viewer. So if that's something that you need, you could look into Panopto or Kaltura would be good options for that.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. Are you currently streaming the webinar from Pearl? Yes, we are. Pearl 2 is just on the other side of the wall over there.
Yeah, here's I'll go back to this is our Pearl 2 that's running this production right now. So if I go to events, I'll see, and we're going to touch on this in a minute, but we scheduled this. So it was automatic, a hands-off experience for us to go live on this webinar
We didn't
today.
press any buttons. It was great.
Yeah, it was quite nice.
So maximum of layouts, generally a recommendation for Pearl Mini, 16 per channel. Pearl 2 is 32. You can wiggle around that number. It's not really too strict, but that's where I would stay. Of course, Nano is one layout, and Nexus is the same number for Pearl Mini. So 16 I'd recommend for that one in channel. Are there currently, let's see here, is there Epiphan Studio software additional cost? I'm not quite sure what you mean. We do have the Epiphan Edge cloud, as well as our other products like Unify and Connect. We're not really going to talk about Unify and Connect today. So we do have other products in our hardware, but other than what we're showing with Edge, our fleet management system, that is really our main thing. We'll do one more question, and then we'll get over to the next part. Sometimes I have green flickering bar at the bottom of the screen on SDI input in Pearl 2. Any idea what that is? It seems to be depending on the device I connect to. 1080p50. I would upgrade your firmware. We did have some issue with SDI in the past where you have a little bit of vibrating video. It depended on the SDI level A or B. I'd recommend you upgrade your firmware to see if that resolves the issue. You could also try changing your resolution. Maybe it's interlaced as well or progressive. We can ingest either, but the output from Pearl will always be progressive. So if you can output progressive, the Pearl is generally better. Otherwise, I'd reach out to support, and we'll dig into that a little bit further.
Okay, thanks,
Cool.
Ryan.
No problem.
Fired through a bunch of questions there. Thanks, that's great. Okay, so where we were before, we have our production running, we're recording, we're streaming, we have switching, we have our branded look for our layouts.
Yep.
Now we want to streamline that production as much as possible.
Yep.
One way we can do that is by creating presets for our productions.
Yep.
The other way we can do is by scheduling,
Yep.
so that our recordings and streams start automatically,
Yep.
and automatically as well.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and demonstrate that a bit here. So here's our Pearl still running. and we can go to presets. Now, preset is like a configuration preset. And here we can see all the configuration presets that our cloud team has created for their devices. We can also see at the bottom here the local presets that live on the device itself. And what we can do here as well is create a preset right here from the cloud. So I'm going to create a preset for this production. We'll call this our Pearl Mini webinar production. And now here on the right is all the components that we want to include in the preset. So in this case, I don't want to include all the system, network, all the settings, other than just the things I want to include are the inputs and those channels that we created. So I'm going to untick everything else here. And for simplicity's sake, we're just going to be saving a configuration preset with the channels and the inputs.
And the inputs just means the inputs that you've created or named on the Pearl device.
Okay. So here it is. It's now living on the device, but we can also upload it to the team library.
Yep. Now any Pearl device on that team of the same type, Pearl Mini in this case, can now take that and apply it.
And here it is here.
Yep.
Right. So now we can, everything that we did on this Pearl here in the studio, we can now apply that to all of the Pearls that we have out there in the wild.
Yep, exactly. And then you could do it. You can do it in the admin interface as well. If we would just want to quickly just show where that is, we won't actually create a config there.
Yeah. If we just scroll down to maintenance, here's where you can create local presets on the device. So
Yep.
you just name your preset. What setting components do you want to include in the preset, and then you save it, and then you'll be able to see all of them here.
Yeah.
The other cool thing with something like well, I guess any of the Pearls really can do this, but you can also recall presets right here on the device. So if I go to configuration presets, I can see them here, I can recall them, and there's the preset that we just created through the cloud.
Yep.
So if I apply this preset, it will load up all those channel settings that we created and those layouts.
And for our live events folks out there, you can do this via USB as well. You could have a bunch of presets on a USB stick, plug it in the front. USB stick has to be named a certain way, but plug into the front, and then you can give it to text out in the field, and you can say, oh, apply this config for this show. They go out, they plug it in, they press the button on the screen, the device is automatically configured to what it needs to be. They don't need to go into the web user interface at all, which is really nice.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, so that's presets. Just a quick way to recall those settings on your devices and apply them across your fleet of devices.
So let's get into showing the scheduling really quick.
Cool. Let's go back to Epiphan Edge here. I'm going to click into, well, actually, first we need to enable scheduling.
Yes.
So here in the admin, there's a tab for CMS or content management. We just need to choose Epiphan Edge as our content management system, okay? That's going to allow us to do scheduling in Epiphan Edge. So I'm going to click apply. And now when we go back here, I've got my Pearl Mini. Click into it. And here we go, events. Now we don't currently have any events scheduled, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's schedule, we'll call this, I don't know, podcast. And maybe we want this to go live today at 4 p.m. And we want it to end at 5 p.m. And maybe we want to repeat this every day.
Yeah.
Or maybe weekly makes more sense for a podcast. And then what we do down here is select what we want to happen at that time schedule. So we want to record our program, obviously. We want to record our 2 ISOs. So we make sure those are selected. And then we want to stream to our YouTube destination just with our program channel. We're not going to stream our ISOs.
No.
Only record those. Then we just click create.
And there it is.
And now we have a scheduled recording and stream. So this is set to go at 4 to 5 p.m. We can start it early. We can get a little bit more information about what will happen. And we can see right here that it starts in 1 hour exactly.
That's right.
Is when that will start.
And if you go to the left-hand side, press schedule, then you get the schedule for the entire fleet. And so you can do a calendar view so you can see your things there, or you can do more of a list view if you go back up to the top.
Yeah,
just to
really
the right-hand side by filters. Then you get a list view of everything. And so if you are, you're doing multiple events and multiple teams, or sorry, in multiple devices, then you can have them all scheduled out, see them all in one pane of glass. Super
Yeah,
nice
you could
way.
think of like maybe you're at a conference and you have a few different breakout rooms and you
Mm-hmm.
just want to schedule those recordings in advance. That's a great way to do it.
Yep.
Okay, so we've streamlined the production now.
Mm-hmm.
There's one last thing that we want to cover today, and that's how to control your production
Yep.
using a Stream Deck.
Yep.
Nice to have buttons sometimes to just quickly apply the functions that you want onto your production. Before we do that, I'm going to run our last poll. And the poll question is, are you currently evaluating solutions for your setups? I know a lot of folks are always evaluating solutions for their setups. The video world evolves pretty rapidly in terms of, all the integrations that exist out there and
Yeah.
all the ways that people set up their workflow. So curious, let us know in that poll what state of evaluation that you are at in your setup.
Yeah, and if you're looking at like external control, things like that, if you're already existing systems like Crestron, Extron, QSys, check out our API video or a webinar we did. We can interface with pretty much everything with our REST API. When we went into showing our UI for REST API, so we have lots of things there. We play nice with everything.
Okay, so let's get to the last part of this webinar, which is the Stream Deck.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think we'll
Oh,
motor
let's-
through this one a little bit more quickly. We're
yeah,
coming up on time here.
I think
so,
we've gone a little bit long here today.
Wonderful.
Thanks everybody for.
Yeah,
we still
thank
have
you.
90 people here
Amazing.
watching. So thanks everyone for being here. It's great to have you guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you how to control this Pearl that we have here in the studio with the Stream Deck. Maybe I'll just minimize that and we'll pull up
There it is.
Stream Deck. So, okay, so this is actually the Stream Deck page that we're using to run this production right now.
You go here, so you can see. So this is it right here, and see we're on that one layout. We did have another page here, which we're going to populate in a moment. We'll show you what it looks like once we populate it.
Yeah, so let's go back to my laptop. There we go. Okay, so what you can do here in Elgato Marketplace, and I'll show you, I'll just bring this up quickly. You can just type Epiphan in your Elgato Marketplace, and you're going to find the Epiphan Pearl plugin for your Stream Deck software, and just click Get. That's all you got to do.
Yep.
And then back in your Stream Deck software, you're going to see this plugin here. Whoops, I just clicked it down. I just close it down. You're going to see the plugin for Pearl. Okay, now we can start pulling in buttons. So maybe we're going to want a record button. Maybe we're going to want a stream button. Maybe we're going to want to see some audio meters. We just choose what functions we want.
Yep.
But now we need to direct where this button is what Pearl it's controlling. So I can control the Pearl that I've already set up here in our studio that's running this webinar, but we're going to add another Pearl. We can control as many Pearls as we want using the Stream Deck plugin. So let's add a Pearl. We're going to call this the Demo Pearl Mini. This is the one that we've been configuring. We need to enter the IP address.
Dan, we just have it on the screen here.
And yeah, we pulled it up on the, we'll go back to that. Sorry.
That's all good. You can see it there.
Yeah, here we go. We just went into our system setup. So the IP address 192.168.3.145. Okay,
You just have to go back to the page.
bounce
There you
back
go.
here. So configure Pearls, add Pearl.
Name went
Pearl.
away just because the page closed. That's
Yeah,
all.
Pearl Mini 192.168.3.145.
3.145.
There's a password here, so let's enter it. Admin.
And then before you press there, see the port and HTTPS. If you had HTTPS enabled, you would enable it there. Or if you were maybe forwarding by some other port in the web UI, then you'd make sure your port lines up. Right now we're using port 80.
Let's click Add Pearl. Okay, it's added. So now for this record button, we're going to select our Pearl Mini. We're going to select which channel.
Oh, press apply first.
Oh, whoops. Apply. Hopefully I entered that correctly. Did I enter something wrong there, Ryan?
Try again. Now click on it. Click on the, there.
This
and
one?
then go to channel.
No, it's not showing the channels.
Oh, we can show the Pearl too. It might just be like a network thing or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we would just choose our channel that we want to record.
Yep. In this case,
We want it to be a
Pearl.
start, a stop, or a toggle.
Toggle is if you press it on and off.
And we can even add a title for the button. So let's call this record. It's going to put the text there. We would do the same thing with stream, but you can also do layouts, layout switching. So maybe we want to have, let's choose we'll do our Studio Pearl. We'll just demonstrate program. So here's all of our layouts that we have for this webinar you're watching right now. So if we wanted to have a layout button to go back to our desk layout, we would create that button here.
And there you see. Now you see it on the screen.
And now I'll push that,
there
and it
is.
does the switch,
Yep.
right? So really that easy. You just add your pearls into your Stream Deck, set up your buttons. There's all kinds of different controls, everything from layout switch to record, start, and stop. You can even apply presets using Stream Deck.
Yep, absolutely.
You can put the audio meters right on the button so that you get some confidence of your audio. So super intuitive way to do your switching.
And everything that you're seeing here is all via our API again, so you can do it with something else. It doesn't need to be Stream Deck. This is just built for you. QSys has a module for us. Crestron has a module for us. Extron has a module for us. So like we have all of these things that make it easier for you to start off in that regard as well. But this is a great thing for users out there to have a Stream Deck. It's super easy to set up, really intuitive.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So that pretty much wraps up everything we wanted to share today. Hope you found it useful and interesting. We will share the recording of this webinar after the fact. Ryan, do you want to take a couple more Q&A questions that have come in?
Exactly. We'll do a couple more Q&As. So it looks like there's only 3 more. So does Pearl 2 record and timestamp inputs as well as streamed outputs? So you can actually set a time clock on Pearl, or you can make it be your time source, and then you can have your network sources looking at the time clock of Pearl, which could help with sync. We do have some stuff with SRT underneath our hood, I guess you could say, and those are timestamped. And so if you have something that uses a UTC timestamp or can look at that for our SRT streams, you could, in theory, sync those together. We do that with Connect is a good example. It's SRT. If you bring in 4 SRT streams from Connect, if they arrive at Pearl within 2 seconds of each other, they'll be synced back up in our back end. So we do have some stuff in there too. Is there any way to remember channels in Pearl? That would be presets, essentially. So you create a preset and then you save it, and then you could apply it to other devices, cloud or locally, and it can all be recalled or make new presets do the same thing. Explain dual. Oh yes, good call. So dual network. So every one of our devices has the single network port. You can indeed add a USB interface. So maybe if you want to go to the Pearl really quick, just the admin panel really fast. We'll show this. And then if you want to go to network down there, if you scroll down, we don't have a USB interface connected right now, but if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see USB interface. And so if you had a USB interface connected to the Pearl device, you can enable it. And now what that allows you to do is you can add a second network. Typically, we recommend a built-in to be on your AV network or your control network, and then the USB to be on your internet connected network. So if we scroll back up again, you'll see a routing table in one of the tabs. Yeah, routing. So we don't have one USB connected, so we don't see 2 entries. But if we had a USB connected, you'd see 2 entries. And then if you click the little edit button over there to the right-hand side, you can change your priority. And then so what you would do is you'd set your USB as a lower priority, being or higher, I guess you'd say, as 1 is the highest and 100 is the lowest. And then any off-network data would be routed via your USB interface. But there's also some smartness, I guess you say, going on underneath the hood, is that if you need to route data to some place, maybe it's connected to the USB or it's connected to the built-in, Pearl will be able to figure out which network that should be routed to. An important thing to know is that there's no crosstalk between the interfaces. So they are segregated completely, so there's no way for data to go from this network over across to that network. They will never see each other.
Very cool. Useful in those scenarios where sometimes people want to control network that is separate from their streaming network so that they're not hitting any bandwidth limitations, things like that.
For sure. Yeah, and if you have other questions, just reach out after the fact. We're more than happy to go more technical in it as well.
Got anything else, Ryan, you want to cover here?
No, that's it. We got all the questions. Oh, does this mean we can use Dante? we're we are looking at Dante. I can't say anything on that, but yes, we understand Dante is important for sure.
Yeah. If you want to learn more about what's in the Epiphan roadmap, a great thing you could do is visit us. We're going to be at Infocom in June exhibiting, and that's a great time to come catch up with us, talk about pearls, talk about the Epiphan roadmap. We've got some new and exciting products coming later this year and into next year as well.
Totally.
So excited to see all you guys there. If you can make it to Infocom down in Orlando, we'll look forward to seeing you. But I think that kind of wraps it up for today. So,
So
thanks a lot. We hope we shared some good information on how to streamline your production with Pearl. We really enjoy interacting with all you guys and answering your questions. And if you have more questions, you can always reach us, info@epiphan.com, support@epiphan.com. And you could, really great way to communicate with us is just to hit up the chat bot on our website. He's the guy monitoring it, so you can reach out to him that way as well. And yeah, it was a lot of fun hanging out with you today, Ryan. So
yeah,
thanks
always.
for doing that.
Thank you, and thank you everyone.
Okay, we'll see you next time.